All right, wonderful. Thank you for coming today. I'm Julia Miller. I'm coming to you from the Australian National University, and my colleague Nick Ward from the University of Sydney, and we are from PARADISEC. And today we're going to talk about language documentation and archiving. We're going to talk about integrating domain-specific archiving practice into tertiary education. It's kind of a mouthful of a title. We want to talk about things like data management, archiving, digital preservation, getting that into the curricula in secondary education or tertiary education. So in case you want to know more about PARADISEC, I have these pages here for you to explore. On the left is our main page where you can find out about us. You can get information about how to deposit and kind of the interesting projects we're working on, links to our blog and also to our podcast. And then the page on the right will show you how to get into the archive and get the materials. So importantly, PARADISEC is a consortium that is actually embedded in 3 different universities in Australia. The University of Sydney, they're at the Conservatorium of Music. The ANU, we're at the in 2 schools or colleges, the College of Asia Pacific, and then the College of Arts and Sciences, and Melbourne in the Department of Linguistics. And just I put this here as a pause because just to talk to you a little bit about things we do. We do a lot of like guest lectures in ethnomusicology classes and in field methods classes and linguistics classes. But at one point we got contacted by a student who wanted to do a job placement for their Masters of Information Studies at a university in Australia, Charles Sturt University. And he was in Canberra, so it came to me to come up with a curriculum for him. I was super excited. I thought this was really a great thing. So I actually put together a 10-day program for him. And then fast forward to COVID, and we had just hired a research assistant and had a volunteer. And you know, they're kind of poor students, and to tell them you can't come to work because there's a lockdown just broke my heart. So I asked my boss, is there a way that I can do an online training program for them so we can like move forward and get them up on the ground running? And yeah, they approved. So I wrote that. I took that 10-day module and exploded it into a 10-week training program. And so that's where this curriculum started. So I'm going to just show you a little bit about, it might be a little bit small, but I'm going to show you a little bit about a few of the weeks. It's a 10-week program, but the first week we have here, it's an introduction to archiving. And so we have the topics up at the top. We have the topics that are covered each week. So in the first week we have the interconnected history of endangered language documentation and digital archiving. And then we have the readings that are associated with those topics. So they cover the challenges of, clearly going the wrong way with the remote. So they cover the challenges of, it's not caught up to this. Sorry, I'm trying to get to this page. Oh yeah. Oh nope, almost. Oh, one more back. Yeah, great. Yeah, so just reading on language documentation and preservation strategies and exploring the collections that are held in PARADISEC, as well as an overview of other digital language archives. So week 3, we go into the FAIR principles, and our topics include something like the importance of making our collections accessible and how we do that. Readings cover the challenges of research data access and data citation and attribution, and also reconnecting communities with archival materials. And then the online resources would cover the FAIR site, as well as examples of curated access that people have done through their PARADISEC collections, and then also rematriation efforts. And just week 6 is an example of how we got really more technical. So that's when we get into digital preservation. And with this aspect, we go into born digital video. So an overview of the video formats, more technical readings, and that sort of thing. And if you want to take a look at these guides that I have, these are the supplemental materials that I wrote to help facilitate learning and training. Okay, so engagement with the students. We have students coming from, like I had mentioned, the programs in library sciences and information studies and media studies, but we also have students at our universities that are coming from fieldwork focused academic disciplines like linguistics, ethnomusicology, and anthropology. And so they have different goals, right? So the job placement students, they're more interested in how does PARADISEC and other digital language archives differ from traditional archives? What is our long-term preservation plan? What metadata standards are used? And what effort do we make in making our collections accessible? So this was the job placement interns that Nick Ward supervised. Oh, sorry, this is the one that I supervised. This is the first one that I mentioned, the Charles Sturt one. That was a 10-day from library sciences. And so he just did really just tucked into learning about metadata. I got him working on a collection of the DaLaBon language. We had some tapes. He was doing how to build the metadata database using LaMeta. He digitized field notebooks we had, and then he also did reel-to-reel digitizing, all in 10 days. He was pretty excited about that. And then we talked about the rematriation efforts, like how researchers are actively working with PARADISEC to ensure materials are returned to the speakers and performers. And then we looked at key PARADISEC examples of rematriation efforts that we have, like the Raspberry Pi that Nick Tieberger talked about yesterday, and then also our TalkBave podcast, which I encourage you to go check out on our site. So goals met. Our student was excited because he was able to understand how music collections are cataloged, and then how PARADISEC preserves digital language and understands how language and music held in archives are made available to communities. And then this is when Nick Ward supervised the students from Manchester, and they did very similar projects, except this was a virtual group. So that was a pretty challenging but very exciting outcome for us and for the students. We got some feedback from them. It allowed them to comprehend and learn how to manage and produce better records for future accessibility. The student recognizes that learning tools like LaMeta and transcribus are highly transferable. The student was engaging in this project, refined my analytical skills and capacity for to independently handle certain assignments. Very, very nice. And if you want to learn more about this experience, Nick Ward wrote a blog post about it, and you can read that from our main page. And then, of course, we've got the students in fieldwork-based academics. So they're more interested in how to follow good data management practice, how to get help with metadata organization, how to digitize and archive research materials, how to ensure access to speech communities that they're working with, and how to find materials in archives that would help with their research. So these are a couple of students that I've been training. The one on the left, Daniel, he's been trained in how to do high-res imaging of field notebooks. And so he's got this beautiful spreadsheet database that he is doing where he's adding, even because he's a linguist, he's able to add language names to the field notes. So he's really enriching the metadata as he goes along. And I think that's really key, a key skill that he as a linguist is able to bring that in. Hagi on the right here, she couldn't go into the field during COVID lockdown. So I was able to get some funding or Nick T was able to get some funding to digitize some tapes that were actually relevant for her. So there's a Helen Verm collection. She did work up in the top end, and that's where Hagi was supposed to be working at that time. And so she was able to learn how to engage with the archive. She searched, and I got her set up with a camera, taught her how to digitize the field notebooks, but also she digitized all of these tapes. And these are some of the images that she generated because we capture all aspects of the metadata of every item that we digitize. And there's also metadata that's extracted. So at the archive level, where we pull this out of the ANU archive, they just have a catalog number, and that it was, you know, maybe PK1 was the tape name. But so How You's work has been able to go through and photograph all of the metadata that came with it, type it up, and we're able to turn over enriched metadata to the ANU archives. We'll be also archiving this in PARADISEC. But then she also has these digital files that she can bring back into the community when she goes back in the field. And so there's this rematriation cycle, or dialogic archiving, if you will, when you have older recorded material from a researcher being taken in by a new researcher with new work being added to it. We have facilities on campus where we do this, where we can train them in the manuscript digitizing, and then also in the audio digitizing. We've got reel-to-reel and cassette tapes, and kids today are super keen to learn this because it's super hipster and awesome and fun. And so you get a strike while the iron is hot. And we have some great students that have worked with us. So these are not students that we've taught per se, but they're students that we've trained as our staff. And so first we have Star there. She's doing a PhD in ethnomusicology in PARADISEC at Sydney. Her experience is that PARADISEC has been transformative, providing her with practical skills, knowledge, and deeper understanding of ethical research practices. Tina, a PhD linguistics student, she was working on her thesis at the time of working for PARADISEC at ANU, and she strongly supports the idea of teaching data management and archiving courses at universities, believing it would benefit students and makes archivists work easier. She also now is an archivist, so that's like her take on it, and that's awesome. And then we have Annie here. So she doesn't work with PARADISEC, but she works with one of our colleagues at ANU and part of the Pacific Research Archives unit. So that's the Pacific Manuscripts Bureau, and so she's digitizing film. And she emphasizes the significance of metadata in archives and the need for indigenous involvement in enhancing archival descriptions to ensure accuracy and cultural sensitivity. And being placed at these universities where we have students that are from these regions, specifically in the Oceania regions, we are able to liaise with them, hopefully get project funding so we can pay them to engage with the archives and also learn some really great transferable skills. And so what we'd like to do is continue conducting meetings with those responsible for curricula development at our universities, as well as liaising with conveners of field-based disciplines. And everyone we've talked to, we've had fora about this, talking about what do students want, because not everyone can get a tenure track position in linguistics, and so they're really keen to try and pivot to something and like bring their linguistics training into other jobs. And so this is the sort of thing that the students have asked for, and now the conveners of the courses are like, oh yeah, we don't have the time to do this, or we don't have the skills to do this, but maybe if you can come in and do more than just a guest lecture, but maybe like a week with our class or whatever. We also run workshops. I run workshops on data management and also field recording equipment, so that students know about microphones before they go into the field. And so that's just really keen. And I've asked every student that I've worked with and that I've trained, and none of them have had any of this information. So it's just a little gobsmacking. So this is definitely a gap that we want to fill. And at Melbourne and Sydney and ANU, I think we're really well placed to do that. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have plenty of time for questions. Vera, is there anything in the chat just to give, because we didn't look at it?
Thank you very much. That was really interesting to see. And I think I'm wondering about so reaching different students. So we are sitting at an academy, and we see, of course, left and right, that there are different avenues for students to go, and they have the curricula in linguistics or in the other fields are still not adapted to the needs that we have today to transfer them. And so I'm wondering, of course, we want to look at very different ways of promoting these things, and one is teaching in person, being at a university. Now we are not. Do you see options or ways of putting stuff like this online and developing like online courses, Moodle platforms, or something for students that are not at ANU?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, this came up during the archives open house. Students were asking about, particularly the tools, how to use the recording equipment, that sort of workshop. Nick Ward and I will definitely have to put our heads together to come up with this a more organized plan to do online outreach, because not everyone can come down to Australia. It would be great. But definitely. And so, I did have that page where I have the resources, the online resources. It would be great if I could just add another couple of links to that. Sorry, this is not zooming back as fast as maybe I'm too fast. I'm super fast. Oh, yeah, right. So this set of workflow that we have online, we use for training materials, and then it's also been taken up for teaching materials. So these pages here, and this was done just to kind of be transparent about our workflows, make them available for under-resourced communities that want to learn how to digitize tapes or want to learn how to transcode born digital files. We have, the best practice, but we also have the good practice, so that we can make sure that, people have options. And also this keeps all three of the institutes that are part of PARADISEC on the same page. And then also we have it for training. And then maybe I haven't digitized a tape for 6 months, and I'm like, I can't remember what the settings are. So I just have to open up the web page and check it out. So so this will be an evolving site. So please check out this site, and also contact me or PARADISEC through the admin at paradisec.org.au. And then you'll be able to shoot us an email and say, hey, I'm interested in this topic, or do you maybe have an idea of what kinds of workshops that you want to do? And then let us know what kind of workshops you want, and maybe we'll just have a little thing of workshops. I know that you folks put on ELAR, you put a lot of your training materials within your archive. Yeah. Well, I thought there was like the Lametta and the Elan stuff that's there for people to access, which I think is really great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so if anyone has done any online courses and want to offer some advice on how they could structure it, how we could structure it, that would be great. And Nick and I will have fun creating learning materials.
We have a question from the chat. You got the term repatriation and replaced with rematriation. What is the reason?
I think it's just, it's common practice in certain groups, but the patriarchy, we don't need to talk about the patriarchy anymore. And these are mother tongues, right? This is a mother language, so we're rematriating it. So it's as simple as that.
Zach, for your question.
I have a question about sort of what the ideal is on the teaching end of this kind of thing at universities and in linguistics departments. And I'm thinking of the fact that at Berkeley, the graduate field methods class tries to do sort of 1,000 things, and is sort of a typology class, and it's a sort of old-fashioned how to do elicitation class. There's a little bit about like what microphones are. They build archival collections in the CLA as part of the class, so there's a sort of small archival component. And I'm just like, if you could dream and sort of explode this into, as many classes as you want, like what would those be in a linguistics department or other kind of setting?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the thing is, neither Nick Ward nor I are academic staff members, so we don't have the freedom to do things like this. So we have to like squeeze ourselves into a system that tells us there's no funding. So, you know, third space academics, ooh. So we are just trying to find out how we can do this. So the only thing that I've come up with so far is just doing occasional workshops and contacting the conveners to get in for guest lectures to see if there is interest in something a little bit larger than having a workshop. Yeah, so that's all I can think of at this time. Like I said, our university's got a lot of cuts that have just occurred, and I don't even have a permanent position. So it's, you know, it's like I want to give to the university because I think research infrastructure is very important, and particularly at ANU, where we have so many students that are from Oceania, and then other students who are doing research in Oceania. I think it just like lends itself to this beautiful, you know, like I had mentioned before, dialogic archiving, where we can go back into the older archives from the emeritus professors, pull out that data, better describe it, bring it back into community, build on that. So that's my little fantasy. But yeah, then do like all the other things of teaching about microphones and archiving.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have time for one more?
No, unfortunately.
You can see me at the break. Okay.
Then let's thank Julia and Nick.
Thank you.